On this Friday night, refusing to back down. The new strikes in Iran and Lebanon. As the U.S. president unveils his solution to lower oil prices, how Russia will benefit. It's being called a gut punch to Canada's economy. Tens of thousands more jobs shed.
This isn't just one bad month.
What it might mean for interest rates. Pothole patrolling through crowdsourcing. Two road warriors' new solution in Montreal and their hopes to make a nationwide app for that. And honoring a journalist killed in Russia's war on Ukraine.
It was always this emotional roller coaster.
The Oscar-nominated documentary no one wanted to make.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Colleen Christie.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. 2 weeks since the start of the war in Iran, and neither the U.S., Israel, nor Iran are showing any signs of ending the conflict. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth told reporters today that Iran is, quote, exercising sheer desperation in its counterattacks against the United States and Israel. His comments follow 6 more U.S. casualties. The death toll is also rising in Lebanon and the humanitarian crisis worsening as Israel intensifies its strikes on the country. Candice Cole begins our coverage tonight.
As the war in the Middle East enters its 3rd week, smoke could be seen over Tehran Friday in the aftermath of strikes on Iran's capital as thousands took to the streets for Al-Quds Day, chanting death to Israel and death to America, according to Iranian state TV, followed by more Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon. This time along its southern coast, killing at least 8 people, according to the country's health ministry. As the United Arab Emirates says it continues to fight off, quote, blatant Iranian aggression, engaging with hundreds of ballistic missiles. In Iraq, 6 U.S. airmen were killed when a refueling plane crashed Thursday, raising the death toll among American troops to 13. Officials say the crash was not due to hostile or friendly fire. Back in Washington, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth made unsubstantiated claims Friday about Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei.
We know the new so-called not-so-supreme leader is wounded and likely disfigured.
Israel suspects the younger Khamenei was injured in the initial blast that killed his father, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. According to Iranian state TV, Khamenei, who has not been seen publicly since assuming power, has called for Iran to keep fighting, saying the Strait of Hormuz can be used as leverage against the U.S. and Israel, as its effective closure has choked off 1/5 of the world's oil supply.
They are exercising sheer desperation in the Straits of Hormuz. Something we're dealing with. We have been dealing with it and don't need to worry about it.
But as the war drags on, experts say tolerance among Americans is waning.
This is a deeply unpopular war amongst Americans. All polling suggests that at the high water mark, there's no more than about 40% support.
The U.S. military is now reportedly sending 2,500 Marines and another warship to the Middle East. That's according to an anonymous U.S. official discussing sensitive military plans with the Associated Press. Colleen?
Candice Cole in Washington. Thanks, Candice. The federal government says it will release 23.6 million barrels of oil as part of the International Energy Agency's pledge to release 400 million barrels in total to help alleviate price increases caused by the war. People around the world are feeling the effects of the conflict at the gas pumps. Today, under intense domestic pressure to lower prices, the Trump administration lifted sanctions on Russian oil, allowing it to re-enter the market. And as Redmond Shannon reports, Ukraine's allies, including Canada, say the move will only benefit the Kremlin's war effort in Ukraine.
The joint international decision to release a record amount of oil reserves this week appeared to do little to temper the price of a barrel. So the White House has decided to look elsewhere to free up even more oil supply. Moscow. The U.S. temporarily lifting sanctions on Russian oil, first imposed for the invasion of Ukraine. The Kremlin says the move shows that the U.S. and Russian interests align.
Russia is already producing gas and oil and send it to China and other places. So I think there's no need to send this message.
It's estimated that since the Iran war began, Russia has been earning an extra $150 million a day due to the higher price of oil. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says allowing Iran's ally Russia to earn even more will only further destabilize the Middle East and bolster the Kremlin's war budget in Ukraine.
Russia is benefiting from that.
All of Washington's G7 allies, including Canada, believe it's a mistake to give Russia this extra boost of sanction relief, while the US attempts to mediate for peace in Ukraine.
There has been very tight cooperation between Russia and Iran at great cost to the people of Ukraine.
Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, says Iran will continue to block oil from leaving the Persian Gulf. That despite US assertions, oil could be safely escorted through the Strait of Hormuz. The Iran war has one positive for Ukraine, though. Zelensky says the US and Gulf states attacked by Iran are scrambling to get their hands on Ukrainian anti-drone technology developed during its 4-year war with Russia. Colleen?
Redmond Shannon in London. Thanks, Redmond. U.S. federal officials have identified the suspect who rammed a truck into a Michigan synagogue. Homeland Security says the driver was 41-year-old Amin Mohammed Ghazali. He was born in Lebanon but became a U.S. citizen in 2016. Police say he died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound after he drove his truck into the Temple Israel near Detroit. There are reports several of the suspect's family members were recently killed in a strike on Lebanon. Today, police remained outside the synagogue as the FBI continues its investigation into what it's calling a targeted act of violence against the Jewish community. Cuba's president has confirmed his government held recent talks with U.S. officials as his country faces a major energy crisis brought on by an American blockade. In a speech, President Miguel Diaz-Canel says both sides were aiming at finding solutions to long-standing differences between the two countries and that international factors prompted the discussions. The Caribbean nation's economy and electrical grid have been in turmoil for months since the U.S. cut off its critical Venezuelan oil supplies following the capture of Nicolas Maduro. U.S. President Donald Trump has also threatened Cuba's leader with a similar fate. Canada's jobs market took a surprising turn for the worse last month. The economy shed 84,000 jobs in February when economists had been expecting a gain of 10,000 jobs. The U.S. trade war was among the reasons for the decline, and as Jillian Piper reports, rising energy costs from America's war on Iran could mean a double dose of economic trouble down the road.
Canada's latest employment numbers show the worst monthly job losses in the past 4 years.
This isn't just one bad month. Employment is essentially unchanged since September.
The national unemployment rate rose to 6.7% in February, a 0.2% increase from the month before, with Canada losing 108,000 full-time jobs and 73,000 private sector positions.
In 2025, we saw weakness, particularly in sectors that were affected by the trade tensions. But now, if we start to see evidence of broadening, it's certainly something we have to keep an eye on.
As U.S. tariffs are still hammering the Canadian auto sector, prompting some vehicle manufacturers to shift production south, the Conservatives are calling on the Prime Minister to protect Canadians' jobs.
84,000 Canadians lost their jobs last month, a devastating jobs report, the result of in part of Mark Carney's Liberal failures.
But The Economist Global News spoke with said there is no evidence that specific government policies caused employment to fall, and the Prime Minister defended his approach.
Unemployment, 6.7%, is lower than the peak the level when I came into office a year ago.
But that may be little solace for Canadian youth, whose unemployment rate ticked up to 14.1% last month. And growing global volatility could soon make the situation even worse by boosting inflation.
We now have the conflict in the Middle East, and it is pushing oil prices higher, which will add costs to businesses and consumers.
This bleak economic outlook will be the backdrop for the Bank of Canada's next interest rate decision on Wednesday, Colleen. where economists are expecting the central bank to hold its current rate of 2.25%.
Jillian Piper in Ottawa. Thanks, Jillian. The Ontario government has announced plans to alter freedom of information laws to keep cabinet members' records secret. The proposed changes will exempt records of the Premier and his cabinet from freedom of information requests. The province says it's about modernizing the laws for what it claims is one of the most transparent governments in Ontario's history. But as Colin DeMello reports, critics say it's anything but transparent.
For the better part of 4 decades, access to information in Ontario has been a public right, allowing journalists and voters to request information on how government decisions are shaped. But in a sweeping change, the Ford government is granting itself a major exemption. The Premier and his cabinet ministers will all be shielded from the law, meaning their offices won't be obliged to share internal documents or emails.
This was not contemplated 40 years ago. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have cloud computing. We didn't have even email. Email was very new at the time.
While the government claims they're modernizing the system, it could also serve to shield Premier Doug Ford. Global News has been engaged in a years-long battle over Doug Ford's private cell phone records, a device he uses to communicate with the Prime Minister, private corporations, and residents. Recently, an Ontario court ruled those records are in fact government business, and keeping them from the public undermines democracy. But the government's new law is retroactive, meaning the court directive would effectively be neutralized.
This will keep cabinet confidentiality, so any interactions of the Executive Council members amongst themselves will be confidential. And I think that's in the best interest of the people so that we can have candid conversations, important discussions, without any potential blowback.
The decision is being met with disbelief.
Well, this is bullshit. I'll start by saying that.
From opposition parties who argue the government is only protecting itself.
So we're kind of wondering which one of these requests, or of your many FOI requests, was it that triggered the government so much that they're going to change the laws to hide their own corruption.
Even Ontario's Information and Privacy Commissioner is critical of the government, calling it a shocking announcement that undermines the principles of transparency. Colin DeMello, Global News.
An update on a Global News investigation that exposed allegations of mistreatment and sexual abuse involving youth treatment centres in BC, Alberta and Ontario. Venture Academy now says it's winding down operations after 25 years of, quote, serving struggling teens and families. Last August, Global News reported that 4 women said they had been sexually abused as teens at homes of host parents linked to the addictions and mental health treatment centres. Parents would pay at least $10,000 per month to send their kids to Venture Academy. But dozens of young people who went there claimed they suffered psychological and emotional harm. In August, the company described itself as a lifeline for those in crisis, saying it has supported nearly 2,000 teens and their families. Why did 2 people in Winnipeg die after donating blood plasma? Coming up, the investigation into for-profit collection clinics in Manitoba. And bumpy road ahead, the app warning drivers about potholes. There are looming questions over the deaths of 2 people after they donated their plasma at collection centres in Winnipeg. Health Canada says it's reviewing the cases, which happened at private for-profit clinics. While that review is underway, the province's health minister says Manitoba may join 3 other provinces that have banned the practice of paying donors for plasma. Melissa Ridgen reports.
Health Canada says 2 people died after giving plasma at 2 private collection centres in Winnipeg. The first death occurred on October 25th, the second on January 30th. Health Canada hasn't named the deceased, but friends identified one as Rodiat Alabede, a 22-year-old international student at the University of Winnipeg. No link has been established between the plasma collection process and the deaths. In a statement to Global News, Grifols says donors go through rigorous health screening and complications are extremely rare. Grifols says they have no reason to believe there's a correlation between the deaths and plasma donation. Plasma, often referred to as liquid gold, is a straw-colored component of blood that's used to treat a variety of life-threatening conditions, including bleeding disorders, liver diseases, and many types of cancer. Canadian Blood Services, which manages the national blood and plasma supply system, says the rate of a serious adverse reaction is less than 1 in every 10,000 donations. In a lawsuit filed against Grifols, formerly known as Canadian Plasma Services, a Winnipeg donor alleges a machine error caused a serious kidney injury. Grifols denies the allegations and has asked a judge to dismiss the claim. Pay-for-plasma clinics are banned in Ontario, BC, and Quebec, but loopholes exist if private clinics operate as agents for Canadian Blood Services.
Banning paid plasma is on the table for our government. We will await the findings of that investigation before any decisions are formally made, but certainly we're keeping all options on the table.
Canadian Blood Services declined to be interviewed, but said the demand for plasma is expected to grow by 50% or more in the next 5 years, meaning donors will be needed more than ever. Melissa Ridgen, Global News, Winnipeg.
Ahead, how a popular app that warns Montreal drivers of potholes could be coming to your city. Potholes. They're annoying, they're costly, and they're an unfortunate fact of winter in Canada. This year, they seem to be worse than usual in some cities. In Montreal, 2 drivers were so fed up they created a website to map the worst fender bender offenders. And as Dan Spector tells us, this new pothole tool could prove popular right across the country.
You know a pothole is deep when you can see back in time through it. This one's so relentlessly battered by passing vehicles that Montreal's centuries-old cobblestone has been exposed.
It's beautiful, the cobblestone.
It's been a new year full of slowdowns and evasive maneuvers for drivers. When student Pierre-Olivier Gagné and a friend slammed into a pothole, they decided to take action.
We have to do something to help the city, so we started a website 3 weeks ago.
They created alleviate.ca. People can report potholes they encounter all over Montreal and beyond, complete with pictures and descriptions.
For an English speaker, it might be a funny name, but a French speaker is usually what we say when we hit something like our knees or a pothole.
All you have to do is point to the area on the map, take a photo, add a description, and submit.
We want everyone to know the location of the potholes, not only in this city, but any city in Canada.
This is far from just a Montreal problem. Drivers in Toronto and Winnipeg are among the many Canadians navigating these minefields.
We notice even in Ontario that we have a lot more than we did and a lot deeper.
CAA Quebec says it's had 50% more calls for flat tires in early 2026 compared to early 2025, and that potholes are a big reason why.
It's busy a lot for our roadside assistance for flat tires in Montreal, and the pothole season started particularly early this year.
Many cities do have a mechanism for citizens to report potholes to authorities, including Montreal's 311, but others don't. Gagné didn't like how Montreal doesn't share pothole location data with the public.
And if they are repaired, you can vote down the pothole so it's removed from the app.
Traditional pothole season usually gets going with the spring thaw, so alleviate.ca might gain in popularity in the coming weeks. Dan Spector, Global News, Montreal.
Armed only with a camera, the Oscar-nominated documentary about a journalist killed in Ukraine. Next. Canada's Natalie Wilkie has claimed her second gold medal in the women's standing sprint pursuit at the Milano Cortina Paralympic Games. The 25-year-old from Salmon Arm, BC, now has 4 medals at these games, 2 gold, a silver, and a bronze, comprising more than a third of Canada's medal total. Wilkie finished seconds ahead of 2 Ukrainian competitors. One of the documentaries in the running for an Academy Award this Sunday tells the story of a journalist killed while reporting on the war in Ukraine. American Brent Renaud was fatally shot 4 years ago this week. The documentary about his life was put together by his brother and a close friend. As Mike Armstrong explains, the two hope the film sparks a broader conversation about press freedom and reminds audiences of the risks reporters sometimes take in pursuit of the truth.
Imagine being 16 years old, leaving home on your own, and trying to make it all the way from Honduras to the United States.
It was a life lived going anywhere, no matter the danger. And as the title of the film says, armed only with a camera.
We've just got some breaking news. Brent Renault, an American photojournalist, has been killed.
Brent lost his life documenting the horrors of the battlefield in Ukraine.
It was a documentary they never wanted to make. Brent Renault's brother and his close friend telling the story of how he was killed. The two spent 3 years on the project, poring through archives of Renault's work.
Soldiers over there.
And the images of his death.
One day in the edit bay, we would see Brent alive. We see him interacting with people. And then the next cut would be him in a coffin or him dead.
Renault had reported from hotspots around the world, places like Somalia, Haiti, Afghanistan, and Iraq. In March of 2022, he was killed in a suburb of Kyiv, covering the Russian invasion. 4 years later, almost to the day, the men closest to him will walk the red carpet at the Oscars with heavy hearts.
It would be nice to be sharing this with Brent. So for me, it's a mix of excitement, but also sadness for him not being here.
You put the camera down? Yep.
Now, the men say they made the movie not as a tribute to one person, but to journalists in general. Since they started working on it around the world, about 400 journalists have been killed.
We hope that this film draws more attention to the kind of work and the kind of filmmakers like my brother who risk their lives to bring the truth. You know, I think there is a war on the truth right now.
Another group the men want recognized is journalists who cover dangerous places where they live. For many reporters, war zones aren't foreign assignments. They're home. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
And that is Global National for this Friday night. I'm Colleen Christie. Tonight's Your Canada is this patriotic snow fort in Warman, Saskatchewan. We love seeing Your Canada. Please email your photos to globalnational@globalnews.ca. Thanks for watching. Hope you'll join us again tomorrow. Have a good night.